That's right, we're back with another Ford Carfax book, or binder, whatever you want to call it. So this is the 1982 version. This is what it looks like on the edge of the cover. There's a stark difference from all the other ones you've been seeing, but from 83 forward, they all take a unique shape or design. But for 82 dating back to 76, 74, about the time that these binders had started, they had, for the most part, looked like this. It'd be mostly white, and I would say Ford and Mercury, and then for Carfax, sometimes there wouldn't be organizer. Sometimes it would just say book instead. Whatever, it was all just in one color print. But they were all pretty uniform with this, with what we're seeing in front of us. So let's pop this open. Right off the bat, they show you a photo of every car that they're offering this year. The ones we'll be interested in. Then there's a table of contents. And it talks a little bit about the binder as a whole. Then we get into the first tab of general information. Now, keep in mind, this one was never used. This binder was never used. And how do I know that? Well, because when I had got it, actually all these tabs, they're supposed to be organized by, we'll say chapter, but it's mostly just car by car. Well, all these tabs were in the way back. They were stacked in order behind the last sheet of paper, the way absolute back. So when I got it, I had to go through here and organize each of these tabs accordingly. All the paper chapters were in the correct order. It's just these tabs weren't. And it's simply because I'm sure what had happened is whatever machine, whether it's a printer that prints off all these sheets of paper, stacks them up, and then they go into the binders, or a robot that gets all these papers, stacks them up, put them in a binder. The tabbed papers it's a different paper. Obviously, these are just normal printer paper, basically. A tad thicker, but printer paper. These, however, one step thicker, and they, of course, have the extra tab protrusion here. Not to mention the special wear coating that they put across the tab itself. So all of those got grouped together, stuck at the end, and then it's just normal printer paper above that the whole rest of the way, but in order at least. That's usually how that works. I've seen this outside of the car literature side of things. Used to do some paper shredding work. Well, you know me, I find literally everything in the universe fascinating, so I pick up on small stuff like that. But starts off with an index, gives you kind of an index as to what's within the general information chapter. Start off with a reference chart here. You can see most of the specifications for all of the cars across the range and their trim levels, all neatly oriented. So if you were looking for say a 4-door and you want to make sure it had a V8, maybe a V6, well, let's see here, 4-door 4-cylinder, nope, 4-door, yep, V6 V8, 4-door V6 V8, 4-door V8s, 4-door V8s, 4-door wagons. So then you're kind of able to track these down, and they're arranged by size. So the further down you go, the bigger it is. It's reflective in the weight for the most part. The EXP is heavier compared to the lightest Escort, but all these other ones are pretty much in order with size, regards to car size. Then I'll actually go over and basically this is just Well, it says glossary. That's what it is. So it defines a few terms. Then it talks about extended service plans, and then some of the other offerings by Ford, like what your maintenance intervals are supposed to be, because Ford had kind of unified these across the line. But they do have each chart for each engine, because not all engines are the same. Like ours all have timing belts. Any of their V anything engines at this point in time, it's all just chain and oil. And then there's some words on safety information, things like the brake systems, the bumpers across these cars, different seat belts, child seat options, and the accommodations they make and design for the cars to support those. Structural information, door safety, and then they get into the chassis. So all your suspension of the body frame, things like that. They talk about each little aspect as they relate to each car, and then they also provide a nice illustration of each of these. And then the last little bit before they get on to the next section. Here's where they list out all the chassis features. Basically trying to describe, okay, these were the photos and these are the labeled parts, but what are the names of some of these assemblies or larger components? So that we'll talk about, in like the case of our cars, it's independent front Pearson struts with zero scrub steering geometry. Springs, they're a coiled type instead of a leaf. Shock absorber is integrated strut spring type, not just a loose shock. Anti-roller bars, and talks about some of their bushings. The same thing with the rears, kind of standard stuff. Next page focuses a little bit more on the steering aspect of things. So in our case, it actually shows a photo of a manual rack from an Escort or EXP, but it talks about them across all the cars. And then we get into brakes. Again, it actually shows the both of the brakes of our cars. I take that back. This is an Escort drum. This is the 7-incher. You can tell because the 8-inch has a lip all the way around it. And this one does not. It's beveled instead of being curled like the 8-inch drums. This front surface, that lip I'm talking about, it's like the lip that goes around the carbureted air box of these same cars. That's what the 8-inch drum would look like. But the 7-inch one, it's this. They actually provide some decent cutaways of the cars, along with some labeling, and they talk about how they've built the structure and how they do all their welds. And then there's a little bit more focused on framed cars now, and they talk about tire information, which is all extremely outdated. They talk about Ford's ever so praised DuraSpark electronic ignition. Talk about aerodynamic improvements. This is kind of a bigger thing here because in 1982 they made the LN7 and EXP. Now, the EXP is decent aerodynamically, but the LN7 even more so, because the whole front of these cars goes through the air pretty good, but the bubble backs even better. And like it says, the EXP is an example of a new car that's aerodynamically designed from the ground up. From the top of the car to the bottom of the car, they spend a lot of time in the wind tunnel. Now there are a few aerodynamic flaws with the cars, but all of the focused aerodynamic features offset those couple flaws. But what's interesting is Ford never advertised it when they were able to get that 3.6 or 3.7 coefficient for the LN7. You'd see some articles bragging about that. For the most part, it would hardly ever come up. They have really good photos and diagrams of each of the bodies of our cars. This one in particular, it's very special because you can see how similar the Escort is to the EXP. Like, it's literally the same. If you can cover up here and here, cover up the tails just a tad, and then cover up the radiator support. They're just the same, samey same. And they talk about them. They go into some details regarding the Escort and EXPs because they're bragging about their unibody system. Fairly new at the time, as they slowly convert most of their fleet to front-wheel drive. Then you talk about insulation installation. I'll actually label where a lot of these things are. Yep, there's a integrated mat as part of the rear cargo compartment in an EXP. There's some mastic, so it's like a peel and stick sound deadening. There's various parts of that on the floor pan in the front and in the rear. You can occasionally see some inside these rear quarters like they're trying to point out, but for the most part, these just use what this says is a quarter absorber. It's basically the same exact mat that's in the back and underneath the front carpet, as it says here. Integral carpet absorber. It's the same thing. And then the dash cowl absorber, that's actually foam that goes all the way from your front seat feet all the way up to the top of the firewall. And it's entirely the same between the Escort and the EXP. You can see it has the same exact labels in the same exact spots. Interesting though is they say there's roof panel sound insulation. That's not really the case. Once in a while you might find a sheet of that mastic up on top against the roof, but even that's pretty rare actually. They talk about some of the seat informations, some of the adjustability. Talk some about the automatic inertia latch for the seat belts. This is like a cable system that goes from your seat belts to the lower corners of each of the door jambs, so that when the door is closed, it pretty much activates these. I don't know how well they work. I've done plenty of experimenting with them, and I think over time they fail, or from the get-go they just don't work in any particular way that Ford engineers were trying to describe. Then we get down to doors and windows, body panels, things of that nature. We talk about wiper squirters some, and heating systems. Eventually we'll look at the instrument clusters and dashboards. We'll talk about the ventilation some. High level ventilation on the panel registers with a low level floor bleed. This is kind of new for the time, the venting that they put into these. This is an AC dashboard, you can tell because it's got all 4 vents. The non-AC ones would have these 2 blanked off. And there's 2 different HVAC systems. There's AC, the non-AC, and you could have dealer air, which is the non-AC, plus a additional system for air conditioning. So it's like an add-on. So in the non-AC cars, how it works is you can send air to 2 places. You can send it up to the defrost vent, and it'll shoot across the whole front window and your side windows, just from the one slot that's across the top. And then you'd have 2 little chutes down by your by your ankles that will shoot, air across your feet. So it would be labeled floor and defrost. And then you would still have these two vents on the sides, but they're not powered by your normal blower fan. They're only powered by the air passing through your car. So what does that mean? There'd be a little pull lever underneath each corner of the dashboard here. When you pull that out, you've opened up the valve. So once you pull that out, now as you drive down the road, as you speed up, air will flow from outside of the car through the ductwork into this vent as fast as you're driving, and then same here. Each knob controls only the vent above it. And it's quite effective. If it's 90 degrees out and you're driving down the road and you pop that open, the amount of air that comes through here is quite impressive. It will feel like your window is open. Like it's just like having an open window without you actually opening the window. It's pretty awesome. On the flip side is when you're in traffic, these do absolutely nothing. They only work if you're, actually driving. So you need to be doing 15 miles an hour at the minimum to feel anything come out of these. But they do work pretty good from 25 on up. And so at 25 miles per hour on up, you'll actually feel some effective air coming through those. And of course, it's solely from the outside air, you're not able to heat these or anything. It's just going to be as cold as it is outside, or as cold as the wind will make it feel on your skin at least. But during the summer, extremely effective. In the winter, you'll never use these. They're detrimental. You'll just be using floor defrost, and you can actually blend between the two. So that's extremely recommended. For the AC cars, you will have these two extra vents. And now you will have your top defrost, you will have your floor, and you will have one that says panel. Panel will send air from the blower motor to all four of these vents on the dashboard. There's also one for high-low, which combines the whole, all four dashboard vents with the two floor vents. But as a consequence, you lose your outside air vents. Your normal, pull the lever. Now you have wind rushing through the car. Now it all just goes through the blower fan, and you can adjust it whether you want it to be hot from the heater core or cold from the AC unit if you use that, or it just meters less from the heater core. Kind of dragging into this a little bit more than I wanted to, but I find it fascinating. AC cars also have recirculation that the other cars do not. So I pretty much just described everything that's in here. Recommends it doesn't recommend it. Points out this condensed fuse panels, kind of standardized across all the cars. Talks about the dashboard. The EXP has a padded vinyl molded dashboard. More instrument controls. Here they show one for an Escort, and this one's unique. Instead of the panels being blanked off, they're actually like little trays for you to put like a pack of cigarettes in or something. And yeah, this car is awfully cheap. It's only an AM radio. There's no clock, but there is one lone speaker here, and where there were corner speakers in the dash, the EXP, they are now just coin trays on the Escort. Very cheap. But it does spend some time to talk about that. We will move on. Now they talk about some of the cargo and luggage features of each of these cars. They actually spend a good amount of time on the EXP cargo system, because this is Ford's only two-seat car at the time. Even the Thunderbird right now has the rear back bench, but the EXP does not. So you have this quite impressive cargo storage area. They talk about each of their other cars. Particularly the wagons. They do spend some time on every body style. Then they talk a little bit about towing. So they list the Ford LTD here. They have a chart for each of the cars, one for Thunderbird, Granada, Escort. Maximum of 100 pounds on the tongue. That's because all these Escort hitches, they mount off of the rear bumper, and sometimes the rear bumper, I'm sorry, it would either be the rear bumper or sometimes they mount off of the spare tire well, which is, just floor pan. Hence why it's only over 100 pounds, and the maximum trailer weight you can be dragging behind you is 700 pounds. And those specs would be the same for the EXP, but they don't list the EXP because with the molded bumpers, you normally wouldn't be adding a hitch onto these cars. Then they get into a VIN breakdown, which is pretty handy, very cool. But I do have all this information up on our database and registry spreadsheet. Again, same thing with the door jams, door jam stickers. It talks about the metric system, but then we finally get into the cars, and right off the bat, top section is EXP. All right, brand new car, a first for 82, a first for Ford. Starts right here. So in all these car sections, the first page is what's new for the model year. And being this is a whole new car, there was not an 81. So it's kind of interesting that they say what's new for 82 when literally every inch of the car is new outside of the the parts it shares with the Escort. But I think that's kind of what this is about. I think some of these are compared with the Escort. So we're at the top. It talks about the 1.6 CVH, 4-speed, fully synchronized transmission, 4-wheel independent suspension, sport tuned exhaust, full instrumentation. That's something the Escorts usually don't have. Manual rack and pinion steering. Power is optional though. You do have powered brakes all around. Many Escorts out there are manual. Rear window defrost. That's special when most of the Escorts are without that. 11-gallon tank. Prior year Escorts only had 10. Some size things and some of the options. Yep. Like this. It says close ratio, but oh yeah. That's because it's correct. So when these cars first came out, they were offered with a 405 final drive, but in November of 81, they've replaced that with a actual close ratio for speed. And then they give a small diagram here. They actually give you a body code, and it says body code. By body code, what they mean is what's on the VIN. So on the VIN number, you'll see a blah, 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 P01. The P01 is the code for most of the EXPs. Now we're at standard features for the EXPs. Most of these are things you should be familiar with by now if you watched a lot of these videos, but I won't spend too much time talking about them just because of that, but we will hover over them so you can see them. And it continues. A lot of standard features compared to the Escorts, though. These first 2 years of EXP, 82 and 83, they really make the Escorts look like scum glass cars. But for 84 through 85 for sure, even the reface EXPs, it made them quite cheaper. Now we're at the optional section. It's a good list of options for these cars, especially considering all the standard equipment they have. And most of the Escorts can only check off half of this list, but then there's still all this extra stuff that you can get for it. And then physical dimensions of the car, everything from capacities to occupants, space consumption, things like that. Steering is an interesting note. Manual has a different ratio than the power. If you have a choice between them, just get the manual one. Thank me later. Talks about the brakes. These all have an 8-inch rear drum. Most Escorts only have a 7. They talk about the transmissions real quick and the tire options. But just like that, we're done with the EXP and moved on to the Escort. On the Escort category, same way, just like all these cars, it talks about what's new for 82. So right off the bat here's a big one. AC will now cut out during wide open throttle operation for improved performance. Yeah, so that meant that the prior year, 1981, if you have a factory AC car, the AC will stay on until you turn it off. For 82, they actually add a kick out. So if you're doing full throttle operation, the AC will either dial back or just disengage for a while. I don't remember which. I haven't driven a working AC car for 82 yet, but I do own one. I own a few 82s with factory AC, 181 with factory AC, and an 83 with factory AC. I even have an 81 with dealer AC, but for the most part, all the rest of my cars don't have any kind of air conditioning. So 82, they added a new body style for the Escort. They now have a 4-door hatchback. We'll show that to you down here. So originally, they had those two cars. For 82, they added the 5-door. And it's mighty impressive because the whole back half of the car is the same except for the quarter window, the door jambs, of course, and then the side doors. All they did to turn this into that was they changed out that front door for the wagon front doors. They made a new back door. The back doors look the same between the wagons and sedans, but it's the top of the window frame that's different. And the arch of the roof on this one versus this one being more flat, that's the difference. So you can't interchange the back doors between these. Then they changed up the rear window, and that was it. These two cars actually share the same exact rear hatch and taillights, yada, yada, yada. Back to the new changes. Ford Oval added to the car. Yes. Originally on the grille and on the back hatch, there'd be a badge that just says FORD. New for 82, all Fords will have blue ovals. They had made the sun visors larger. Yeah, I can test that. My 81 is pretty small. There's a lot more options here. There's 8 exterior colors now. I think the prior year only had like 5 or 6. It says 2 interior colors. I'm pretty sure it's 2 new interior colors. A lot of new trim changes. A few changes inside. Yep, 11 gallons now made standard. Seat track was extended a little bit. And there were a few other changes here and there. I can attest to some of these, like the seatbelt travel. And there was a seatbelt change at some point during 1981. I have 2 81 wagons. One has a different seatbelt hanger out front than my other one does. One will actually have the hanger on a pivot, and the other one has it on a sling. And the sling one sucks. I hate that because none of them are adjustable, but the one that pivots, they actually hang it really high up the A-pillar, so that if you're a tall person like me, it will accommodate all sizes of human beings. But the one that's on the sling, it moves around a lot, which stinks. If you're very tall like me, you're actually taller than where the belt reaches the top of its arc and comes back down. So it would reach the top of its arc, and it would still have to go up my shoulder for going back down. And it's just terrible. Absolutely terrible. And I can't vouch to how unsafe it is, but being the sling swings quite an arc, It's not doing much to protect me in a car accident either. Oh, before I go too far, it does talk about each of those body codes we mentioned and tells you what trim options are available in each of those. So there was never a base 4-door or base wagon. There was only a base 2-door, the cheapest car available. And then you would have the L, which is the main one. GL is a little bit more loaded. GLX is primo. There would also be the performance version, the GT, but only as a 2-door. Here we talk about the standard features of each trim. That's where these, you'll see there's a number of Escort pages here, and compared to the EXPs, they're rather inflated because they have to talk about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 trim levels across 3 bodies. So, we'll start off with the base model Escort. Again, only available on the 2-door. Talks about all of that. Nothing too crazy fancy. It just goes to show how cheap it is compared to the trim level above it. But the photos are good reference because you can actually see some of these differences side by side. For the most part, it's just trim, like the bumpers, the wheels, the B pillars, any door guards, the type of mirrors. But the main takeaway is that you can see them side by side. There's an obvious difference between the cheapest car available, which has no glamour whatsoever. The only shiny parts of the car are the mirror, the windshield trim, the front grille, which is chrome, the painted silver headlight surrounds, and the painted steel wheels. All of the other ones, they have a lot more shiny pieces. Yeah, except for the GTs. The GTs usually get the blackout treatment. Then it does the same thing, but it goes through the wagons. Those are rather unique. Won't spend too much time on them because they are just the same as priors. And then we finally get to the point where it's all labeled out in charts. And this is where things actually get a little bit more interesting, as you can see each of these trims and body styles laid out together. So as we go down, you'll see some of these, like the GLXs, usually have the most amount of dots. And as usual, you're welcome to pause at any point here and check these out, because Ford Heritage doesn't have these on their website. So there's nowhere to view these aside from having one in your lap like I do or watching these videos. Next, we're in the optional equipment category. It lists everything that's optional, and you can see that in the base level car, almost everything is not available. Those are fuel saver fleet cars. Same story here. You do have some radio options, but nothing else. Your base level car will never have sunroof or reclining seats or cruise control or the Woody package or power steering or handling packages or automatic transmission. No shiny on the wheels, no rear defrost, no interval wipers. Even though all of those are things that you can actually change yourself right now with the help of a very cheap donor car. If you got the car, you could have the dealer do any of that stuff at the time. None of it was offered from the factory. This is basically just a dimensions page. It talks about some of the sizes of the vehicle inside and out. Capacities, tire availability, transmission availability. Nothing too crazy. Again, all this just looks like a lot because they have to showcase all three sizes of car, all three body styles, and a large number of trims. For the most part, there's still less than that of the normal EXPs. Powertrain section. Yeah, so what I did here is after the Escort section, we skip ahead. Skipped a whole bunch of tabs. They're all just other cars. All the cars in this book, for instance, are blue, and then all the generic info is white. It's like that in all the other books. The car tabs will be a different color from the general info tabs. And they spend some time talking about each of the engines. And they do it in some pretty interesting and good detail. And then after they've mentioned each, talked about them pretty thoroughly, they will go and pull up a whole specs chart, as well as tell you what vehicles they'll be offered in. It continues. We'll skip along a little bit. And you'll see some additional engine complement information. Things like self-adjusting clutches, some of the automatic transmissions. It talks about our manual transmissions here some. And then it will actually go and list a lot of this information side by side. So you can see things like oil, capacity, what type of some of these fuel systems are, some of the cooling systems. Even though it's pretty much all the same, they just start splitting hairs. And then they show what's optional for battery and alternator combos. There's the alternator side of things. Then we get... I'm not sure why it's giving us camshaft data when it's really not really showing anything useful. Clutch sizes, kind of interesting. Not too practical. Fuel tank data, interesting. Again, not too practical. Unless, like, at the time, maybe you're a salesman who drives across the country frequently or something. Then we end things out a little bit with some transmission information. Then last tab is options and accessories. This one's usually pretty interesting. Right off the bat, they give you an index, so if you're looking for a specific option, you can find it on the page, figure out which cars they are in, and then go to either that in the back here or read about the rest of the car in the car tabs. Value packages. There's not too many packages. Yeah, it says right here, all models except EXP and Escort. So in the EXPs and Escorts, there's not really any package groups or trim groups. Or, sorry, not trim groups, option groups, because they had trims, or at least the Escort did. And the EXP was so loaded that there was no need to differentiate between any kind of tier levels. You either had one that was loaded or you didn't. Starts talking about these options in some detail. I actually provide some photos where able, but most of it doesn't pertain to our cars. Some of the stuff's optional. They show a clock from an EXP or Escort. It's probably an Escort because the dashboard's so light it's got to be colored. That's one of the big differences. Is in 82, all EXPs had a black dash, but all Escort ones are colored. You couldn't get a black dash in an Escort unless you had a GT. Talk about the lower console in our cars, which is interesting. It's kind of another unique thing to EXPs. Most of the Escorts would not have a full console. Convenience group is one of the few groups you get in our cars. You can see it even points out it's for the EXP where you get the clock The liftgate release, which is actually in every EXP. Glove box light, that's in every EXP. Engine compartment light, again in every car. Ashtray light in every car. Headlight warning buzzer in every car. Actually, the digital clock is in every car unless you get a clock delete credit. So you'll get a credit of like $25. So it says convenience group, but all that is actually just standard equipment. More miscellaneous equipment. There is a fuel saver option for the Escort. Yeah, usually gets you the itty bitty fuel tank, because saving those 10 pounds in fuel might get you that 0.002 mpg better. Then they talk about the 1.6 higher output. It says high output. It should say higher output. Optional engine that came on pretty late in life. I think March of '82 is when they started being offered. More mechanical type options here. So it continues listing more engines, some transmission stuff before it gets into more of the deco kind of things, like instrumentation. Particularly in the Escort one. There's some interesting info there, but again, all just standard crap if you have an EXP. Oh, what's this here? A light group, all models except EXP. That's because the EXPs already have all the lighting that they could have. Options, you'll see things like louvers, glove box lights, yeah, various lights and buzzers, yeah, all stuff that EXPs have. Just optional stuff like roof racks and louvers. Kind of the few things you can actually add to the fairly loaded cars. I'll give you a rundown of some of the more luxury interiors. And then you get into mirrors, whether it's in the visor down here or up on the doors, like up here with our cars. You know, the Escorts will usually just have a fixed position shaver mirror, as I call them. Usually only on the driver's side, but sometimes you can find one that has it on both. It would be pretty rare if you had an Escort that had these remote mirrors, and when you do, sometimes it's only on the one side. EXPs, they always have the remote mirrors, and there's always one on the driver's side. Sometimes there's one on the passenger side. What's left? So the exterior options, things from special paints to special trims. Like on the EXP, all it is just two-tone paint body. On the Escort, you have two-tone paint and the woody package. Premium sound, yeah. Pretty rare in our cars. Protection groups, that is a group that exists on these. And what you would see is the bright door edge guards. So the rubber door strips, you'll see that on all EXPs. Bright license plate frames, yeah, you'll see that on all EXPs that have a front plate anyways. The ones that don't have a front plate won't have that. Glove box lock, all EXPs have that. Front color keyed carpet floor mats. I think EXPs have those. It's interesting because none of my cars actually have any factory floor mats up front. I just have dealer ones. Rear color keyed carpet floor mats. Yeah, there's no rear seat, so there's no reason to have feet in the back. Sound system options. A lot of options here. Boy, a lot of options. And there was only more as time went on because there would be all of these. Plus, you could get one that has the electronic channel searching. Electronic tuning, I guess. These are single DIN, or maybe not even single DIN radios, but they're more integrated radios. All the dual dial ones are the standardized size, very interchangeable. Talk about some of the roof options. For our cars, we don't have anything except for the sunroof and sometimes a rack. Getting into seat options, again, it talked about the plush ones earlier. Now it's showing some of the normal ones. Rear seat options. Power seats, which our cars never got. Standard seats for our cars. Some of the fancy seats for the EXPs. These are the leather and shearling seats, as they call them. They're essentially just sheepskin. So where it's white, that's all just wool, and where it's black, that's black leather. And that is an EXP that has AC, no cruise, so it might only be a mid-option car. But you can see that seats like that are only available on the higher trim cars. More options. Tilt steering wheels, which, our cars wouldn't have until the late 80s. And then miscellaneous options like suspension and towing, that kind of things. Brakes. TR suspension package is available on our cars. It means you get TRX wheels and tires, which are non-existent. They are in that size, the 365 millimeter diameter, which is like 14.5 inches. Then it actually goes and shows off all of these in pretty good detail, actually. And they mentioned the vent windows, which you would find on some Escorts. Again, crazy rare, and no EXP would ever have them. Then they finish it off with a little bit of window information, like rear wipers on the Escorts, interval wipers on the, again, Escorts. It says all models except EXPs because they come with it from standard. Same thing with rear defrost. We passed over that a while ago. Then there's a blank page, and the book ends. So that is that. Normally these books would show like a combination of all the interior codes, like the actual codes themselves, the 2-digit codes you'd find on the door jams stickers. But for some reason, these 82 books, they do not. I forgot to mention that, but in the section that would normally have it, it said, please refer to this, the Ford Color and Trim section book. This is a large padded binder, and inside, are actual samples. Try to get to a page that actually has said samples. Actual real life fabric samples from each of the seats of the car. And if you have a car like the Futura that would have a vinyl roof, there'd be samples of the colored vinyl roof in there as well. And they'd have the charts with all the interior codes on the X plane, and then on the Y plane is all the body styles or trim levels that car could have each of those in. Arranged very well. But just for some reason, they wouldn't duplicate that data and put it in these books. So if you're looking for that, you need this and the much more rare, much more expensive Ford Color and Trim Selection binder, that padded binder. Pretty hard to get a hold of, and everyone wants $100 or more for those guys. But it's kind of everything involving these. Keep an eye out for more videos. I'm slowly gathering more of these. They trickle in as I find them at reasonable prices. So $100 for one of these books isn't too bad, honestly. But when you're like me and you want one for every single year because you have every single car and you're providing a database for every single car, it just becomes mandatory. But if you only have one car, well, it's very easy to splurge on these. Plus, there's a lot of lots online where like you can get this 82 Ford Carfax organizer with a 82 Ford trucks fax organizer, as well as like other miscellaneous binders for just a little bit more than what I'm spending on each of these. So there are some good deals to be had, but it all just adds up so fast with the extent that I'm trying to accumulate these things. Not to mention the space they take up, a lot of space. But we'll leave it at this. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below. I do address them frequently, and hope to see you soon.